talk a little bit about the stress and issues of planning a wedding. David, I have said it more than once based on my own experience that there is nothing more romantic than getting engaged, and there's nothing less romantic than planning a wedding. And I truly believe that. I just think it's a lot of work, and people can get sidetracked and other people get involved, and it can be very frustrating at times.
It can be, and we have a much bigger expert on the topic than me on the line. But in my humble opinion, I think people have put such a lot of freight on it being a perfect day or whatever. It's really just a party, and that's how our wedding was. We had a minor-ish party with a big side of salmon in my friend's backyard and a bunch of snacks. It really didn't cost that much. It was pretty low-key, and we had a ball.
We're joined right now by Alison McGill. She's the editor-in-chief of Wedding Bells magazine. Alison, thanks so much for joining us.
Good evening.
Hi. You know, it's interesting, the point that David brought up. I think that a lot of people after the wedding, and maybe years after the wedding, looking back, would probably do things a little more simple than they did it. But he mentioned the point about pressure of putting on the perfect wedding. Do you find that a lot of people feel like that as they're getting prepared to plan their own?
Absolutely. I mean, today, everybody doesn't want their wedding to be just an event. They want it to be an experience. So there's definitely some pressure for couples that they feel that they need to throw the party, of their lifetime. That's going to be that unique experience for all their guests coming to this. But I really don't like when I hear people say, we want to get away from people saying, if I had to do it all again, I wouldn't do it the same, I'd do it differently. I think you got to head into your wedding day and get the party that you want and plan the party that you want.
Well, if I can speak from personal experience and other people I've spoken to, I think it's not that the experience wasn't great. I think it's when you look back at how much money you've spent, if you've had any kind of a fairly large wedding, you just sort of realize, you know what, I think people really get caught up in that aspect of it.
In the spending or in the size?
In the spending.
In the spending. Well, it's easy for a budget to get away on you 100%. You really need to keep focused on those numbers. And I think that, I think couples today are maybe a little more responsible in their spending. I mean, we're dealing with millennials here who are getting married, and money is an important thing to them, and they are actually pretty savvy about saving and following budgets.
And Alison, what about to Barb's point that the proposal is romantic, and then there's this interim period? Do you have thoughts for people on how, there's a lot of pressure in the planning, you want to get it just right? I have personally seen a lot of people start to bicker, which is an unfortunately unromantic thing leading up to your wedding. You don't want to be uttering your vows through clenched teeth. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think a wedding, when we talk about it, I mean, it's such a huge social event, and it touches so many different aspects of your life because all the important people in your life are involved in this. So it's a very emotional affair, and this is where things tend to get off the rails and what causes fights, because typically everybody has an opinion on things, and it could be a mother, a father, a mother-in-law, a sister, brother, uncle. Everybody has their say sometimes when it comes to the wedding, and the bigger your wedding, the more people typically are involved and could chime in. So that period when you're engaged, which many people are right now, Christmas engagements are huge. We know that from studies at Wedding Bells, so congratulations if you're engaged and planning. It is an exciting time, but you have to be realistic and, try and dial things down, and you've got to kind of manage these emotions and expectations.
Is it old-fashioned to say that the person footing the bill should kind of have the ultimate say, or am I way out of line in 2015?
Well, a lot of couples pay for their wedding themselves.
Oh, so, they do these days?
Yeah, it's not necessarily like a family. It's not necessarily a mom and dad footing the bill. I mean, certainly families do help. And, there's all kinds of equations that go into weddings, costs and planning. And that's what's interesting about weddings today is that they're not cookie cutter, and they're not cookie cutter in the way that they're planned and financed. So it's an interesting time.
What do you think is the ideal amount of time to elapse between a proposal and the vows?
Well, typically...
Is 6 months, a year and a half, a month?
I mean, you can pull a wedding off in 3 months. You can pull a wedding off in 2 weeks. You can pull a wedding off in 2 years. A lot of factors come into that. I mean, typically the length of an engagement that most of our Wedding Bells readers have told us that they have is an 18-month one.
I have a question for you about the guests that are coming to the wedding. So what if you know that this aunt and that cousin are not speaking?
Right.
Is it the bride and groom's responsibility to worry about that? And I'll give you an example. Like, I can't even remember the situation, and it wasn't a huge one with our wedding, but there was something along those lines. And I said, you know what? They're adults. Let's extend an invitation to both, and they can decide to do whatever they want to do. But I'm wondering how much the bride and groom are responsible for, seating them far apart or any of that.
Well, I really love your philosophy there. I think you definitely had the right attitude. I mean, you can only take on so much stress, and you can only take on so much responsibility when planning your wedding. You can't please everyone. So it's not necessarily a responsibility. If you know there's like huge sensitivities and bad relations, try and manage that, I would say, but don't let it consume you.
Also, you mentioned the point about everybody wanting a say when a couple is planning their wedding. How that's got to be stressful for a lot of couples to have so-and-so wants this and this person wants this. First of all, why do you think it is that people feel this right to insert themselves into somebody else's wedding, and what should couples do about it?
Well, I think, we're dealing with one of the major lifetime events, and people get excited, and people think that everybody needs their input because I think we live in the age of the expert. Everybody feels that they're an expert on everything, and it's great to offer an opinion. Now, I think when you're the couple that's planning a wedding, you need to take all of this in stride, and you have to be prepared for it. Like, with an engagement comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of emotional balancing.
Can I say another old-fashioned statement, Alison? And you tell me true or false. This has always been my aphorism about it. It is the bride's day, and it is the extent to which you understand that is the extent to which you are spiritually developed as a human being. In other words, people, even if you're the groom,
right?
And I felt that at my wedding. Like, this is my wife's day. I get on the monkey suit. I make sure I've got the ring, but this is all about her.
Right.
And the other people who all get involved and get, poke their proboscises into the situation, you always feel like, if you're being helpful, yes, but the minute you're being kind of a busybody, no.
Right. Nobody likes a meddler. Definitely it's always been thought of to be the bride's day, but I will tell you that today couples, I find that they are different. Grooms are very actively involved in planning the wedding. Couples really divvy up the responsibility. Guys want to be involved. They want to have this great party too, because again, let's go back to my statement and talking about weddings just aren't events, they're experiences.
So I wanted to ask you about the whole experience of the wedding situation. I've seen some people have, 2 or 3 bridal showers. Then there's a Jack and Jill. Then there's a bachelorette. Then there's a bachelor party. Like, is there going too overboard when it comes to all of these things you expect people to attend before they attend your wedding?
I think there can be a certain amount of overcommitment when it comes to the pre-celebrations. People can feel that. I think you need to be a little bit mindful of that, but people may want to celebrate you, so it can happen that you do have a couple of showers. Again, I find that it tends to depend on the size of the wedding, the size of the families. All of these circumstances, factor into things. But weddings are expensive. They're expensive for people who are involved. They're expensive for guests. They're expensive for the couple. So I think in today's age where people are a little savvier about their spending, you need to think about the big picture.
Hey, do millennials still have bachelor parties at strip clubs? Because I actually found the last couple times, well, you opened the door, Barb, so I'm just going to kick it wide open.
That's
okay. Last couple times I've been invited to a bachelor party was like ribs and scotch and then off to the strip club. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to skip the strip club part. I don't know if that's because I was, feeling that part of it kind of, I'm not as comfortable with it as I used to be.
As you used to be.
Well, in my 20s, I probably would have gone to the strip club, but now I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. And I wonder if millennials are kind of coming, just knowing what I know of them, if they're coming around to feeling the same way.
I feel like the pre-parties are a lot, again, about experiences. So bachelorette parties in Vegas, guys go away for guys' weekend. Sometimes what happens when you're on vacation stays when you're on vacation.
Yikes. All right, Alison, this has been really interesting. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me.
Alison McGill, editor-in-chief of Wedding Bells magazine.